Sengoku BASARA. Do I ever shut up about this series? While only the first and third games were brought to North America, and the first being regarded as a complete and commercial failure, the third is an improvement of such magnitude that to this day I fail to see why it sold so horribly, especially with the popularity of the anime the series inspired. I came into this series expecting a Samurai Warriors knockoff, but man, was I wrong. Especially notable are its characters. They encompass a wide range of personalities, and each is colorful and goes through some kind of development both in and out of their stories. And what better way to get word out about a heavily overlooked gem than to count down not 10 or 20, but all 35 characters, both playable and non-playable, in Sengoku BASARA Samurai Heroes and the Japan-only expansion, Sengoku BASARA 3 Utage. Keep in mind that these characters here are judged by 4 categories: uniqueness, likability, fighting style, and story mode. Without any delay, let's get the party started!
I think that puts the blame squarely on your shoulders.
Really?
I said it from the start. As a successor, you're a total disaster! And Hideyoshi Toyotomi is nothing more than a shameful old fool!
Well, you must know, I too am a lord of the state! Please stop! Forgive me! I beg your forgiveness!
Well, the list has to start somewhere, with my least favorite character in the game, Kobayakawa Hideaki. Hideaki is a complete coward. You could just look at this guy, and he'd panic. The only reason you'd ever have to be afraid of his army is the ominous monk Tenkai, who is allied with Hideaki for reasons unknown. I do give him credit, though. He does gain some bravery at Sekigahara, where he openly defects to the Eastern Army, only to return to his cowardly self seconds later when he realizes Mitsunari overheard it and is now out for Hideaki's head. His stage, the Siege of Karasu Castle, splits into 2 paths, where you choose to pursue either Tenkai or Hideaki. And if you picked Hideaki, be prepared for an annoying battle with this guy. Busy with his comfort food, Hideaki will only come out when you claim control of the 3 ovens around the gigantic pot. And once you do, he runs for it, stealing back all 3 bases in seconds and going back into hiding again. Unless you can corner him, get used to chasing him back and forth over and over and over again until you finally smack him into submission. In the Japan-only expansion, Sengoku BASARA 3 Utage, Hideaki was made playable and even gained a story mode, albeit a short one of only 3 stages. And his attack pattern, despite using a hot pot as a weapon, centers mainly on panicking, though his BASARA attack is hilariously similar to a certain final smash. Also, I think it's worth mentioning, Hideaki's voice actor is Tony Oliver. Yes, that Tony Oliver. I guess everyone gets a bad role every now and then.
He's nothing more than a shameful old fool!
There's a storm coming. I can feel it brewing. Its chill will freeze the waves. But wait! I will keep the storm at bay. I am the Crane Tsuruhime, and nothing can stop me once I've taken flight.
Tsuruhime is a newcomer to the series, and as much as I'd love to play Anachronism Stew with her even being in this game, this isn't TV tropes. Anyways, known as the Oracle for her ability to foresee the events of the future, Tsuruhime has lived a sheltered life, to the point that in her story, she doesn't know what the word sadness means and mistakes tigers for bears. That, and she honestly thinks Yoshitsugu is a good man, and it takes Motonari, of all people, to convince her that honesty is not a word in Yoshitsugu's vocabulary. And to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of her. I found her more annoying than likable, and even then her fighting style isn't my favorite. Tsuruhime's weapon is a bow, and she does best attacking from a distance. The further you are from an enemy and can still hit them, the more damage it does. You can also wait until the arrows flash to do even more damage. However, despite all the chances she has at doing high damage, this makes her a poor character at one-on-one battles, considering half the time you're busy trying to distance yourself. For that matter, until Utage came around, Tsuruhime was the only playable character with the element of ice, and if it weren't for her Basara attack, I'd say light would have been a much more suitable element for her. Ultimately, as a new character, she's clearly a miss, and that's why she isn't any higher on the list.
He's nothing more than a shameful old fool!
わしは戻ってきた。ここに戻ってきたぞー！風林火山！不死身の虎、わしが武田信玄じゃ！
I will admit this guy is awesome, as much as some of the contenders much later on the list. Really, but Capcom missed a lot of potential with this guy, and that's why he's so low on the list. In the original game, we only see Shingen in a few opening cutscenes where he's suffering from a terminal illness, putting Yukimura in command of the Takeda army. However, in Yukimura's Blue Route, Shingen has miraculously recovered, and the sight of him as well as a punch to the face is enough to motivate Yukimura to finish his fight with Masamune. In Utage, Shingen was made playable, having suddenly and dramatically recovered from his illness. And while Shingen is satisfyingly fun to play as, I was pretty disappointed that for such a dramatic reveal he didn't get a story mode, and the only time you actually get to fight him is in the Takeda Dojo, which is not only a pain to unlock, but really serves no other purpose other than to test your advanced skills with each character and give you a chance to fight Shingen. And really, there's not much else to say about this guy other than that Capcom really could have done a better job of making his reappearance more worthwhile than just the Takeda Dojo and being a character without a story.
More than a shameful old fool!
It's hard to walk in his armor. You see? Clumsiness doesn't help.
Sengoku BASARA 3 has 5 non-playable characters often referred to as the Regional Lords. The first you'll likely see is Satake Yoshishige, who I can say is probably the most beginner-friendly of any character, even if not every story allows you to immediately fight him. He and his soldiers, unable to afford jointed armor, will clumsily enter battle, and Yoshishige himself even walks into the camera. To aid this, he built Satake's Academy of Gentlemen, and his stage, Headstrong at Kubota, involves gaining entrance to the academy by occupying the 3 camps along the way, and battling Yoshishige once inside. Yoshishige uses a double-bladed pike in battle, and his attacks are pretty straightforward: a ground-slamming attack, a basic combo, a dash attack, and buffing up his attack for a few seconds. Sadly, since he isn't playable, there's really not else much to say.
He's nothing more than a shameful old fool!
What's the problem? Why am I angry? I'll tell you why. Why can't I be the one who wins? I want to restore the glory of the Hojo clan. After that, I want to rule all Utage.
Ujimasa is pretty much the punching bag of the series, and really, I kind of feel sorry for him. During Hideyoshi's invasion of Odawara, Ujimasa's life was spared by one of Hideyoshi's strategists, Kanbei. However, the swift defeat the Hojo clan met tarnished their reputation. Ujimasa attempts to restore honor to his ancestors with the Fuma ninja at his side by allying with Ieyasu prior to the Battle of Sekigahara. Though he wasn't made playable until Utage, he's essentially Kotaro's voice of, well, everything in the duration of Kotaro's story mode. As a playable character in Utage, Ujimasa seems like a pretty useless character, considering his weapon of choice is just a makeshift spear made out of several swords, a weapon he has little skill with using, making him poor at weapon locks. That is, until Ujimasa dons a Moxibustion hat to improve his health, growing some serious muscles within seconds and becoming quite overpowered for the duration, wielding his weapon competently. Though, really, there's not much else to Ujimasa that would get him any higher on the list.
He's nothing more than a shameful fool!
Your attention! I built this from a very powerful cannon, so fear it! I call it the Great and Honorable Head of Zombie! In the name of Zavism, let's go Zombie!
Ugh, this guy. I don't like Sorin at all. If it weren't for his playable appearance in Utage, he would have been number 34 on the list. Sorin worships the missionary Francis Xavier, and calls him Xavi. So much so that he creates an entire religion dedicated to revering Xavi as a god, aptly enough called Zavism. This guy's personality bugs me almost as much as Hideaki. He's so stuck up and conceited with his devotion to Zavism. The only reason to fear this guy's army is because he has Tachibana Muneshige in his service, yet Sorin treats him like garbage. Considering Zavism stems from a Jesuit missionary, Sorin is hardly the kind of person I'd consider a good Christian. Sorin's weapon of choice is a tank shaped like Xavier's head, called the Head of Xavi. It comes in two sizes, a large tank capable of shooting missiles from its eyes, releasing occupation chiefs and squad leaders, and singing?
If something were to happen to my lord, I would be lost.
And when Sorin became playable in Utage, his small-scale tank became his primary weapon. As much as I hate Sorin, he's actually a lot of fun to play as. Sorin can use the Head of Xavi to slam into enemies, summon angels to pick up enemies and turn them into both a barrier and a weapon. Oh, and did I mention the head can sprout arms and legs, becoming a miniature mecha? For lack of a witty joke to end this segment with, here's his victory pose. Have some English.
それでは一緒に Let's Happy Ceremony!
He's nothing more than a shameful fool!
The desert hides me from my enemies. It's my greatest weapon. Now be gone before I use it on you.
And so we find ourselves met with the second of the 5 regional lords on this list, Amago Haruhisa. Haruhisa was, historically, a rival of Mori Motonari, though in Sengoku BASARA 3 he's one of the regional lords, and doesn't serve much purpose other than filler. A hermit and an illusionist living out in the desert surrounding Gasantoda Castle, Haruhisa prefers not to be bothered, nor does he have any interest in the world outside of his desert. And for a hermit, the few lines he actually has, he's pretty respectable, albeit in his own cynical way. Haruhisa's gimmick is that he'll hide in the sand and flee, also creating a sandstorm to obscure the map and lower your visibility. The only way to clear it is to capture the base, or do so when he retreats. After doing this a certain number of times, he'll retreat to a hidden cave inside of Gasantoda, at which point he fights without backing down. To be honest, this guy is probably the least interesting of the regional lords, but for the love of Amaterasu, his stage looks amazing. Even if it makes my PS3 lag.
He's nothing more than a shameful fool! Shameful fool!
After the Tiger of Kai fell ill, it began again. New misfortunes arose to plague his life. Run away! I will not let you tread upon this snow. This is Lord Kenshin's land!
I'm not a fan of obvious fan service characters, with few exceptions, and Kasuga is not one of them. There's not really very much depth to Kasuga. She's simply a kunoichi obsessively in love with her lord Kenshin, and practically borders on yandere every time she gets complimented by him. And trust me, that happens a lot. For that matter, she's a yandere to Kenshin, she's a tsundere to Keiji, most notably whenever he gets killed. Kasuga was not playable in the original game, but was added to the cast in Utage, albeit without a story mode. As for her weapon choice and fighting style, Kasuga uses several kunai, connected to her hands by some form of wire. These allow her to use them as claws for close combat, pull enemies towards her, or to create illusions with the wire. And that's all the screen time Kasuga gets until the recap. Moving on.
He's nothing more than a shameful old fool!
It is my friend. It is my family. The forest is everything.
This guy gives new meaning to the term tree hugger. Yoritsuna, who considers himself one with nature, is kinda middle of the road to me. I like his stage and fighting style, yet something about him makes him seem kinda odd. One of the 5 regional lords, Yoritsuna's fighting style involves summoning logs out of nowhere to either roll you over like a steamroller, making sharpened logs burst out of the ground, or summoning them underneath him to avoid your attacks. As for his stage, Kairikumo Castle, it's a castle built in the middle of a chasm in a forest clearing. To get to Yoritsuna, you must capture the 4 bases at the edge of the chasm, with each forming a bridge that leads you closer to the top. However, let me ask this. If Kairikumo Castle is made of wood, why are the only enemies guarding it fire archers?
He's nothing more than a shameful old fool!
If the young ones intend to rule these lands, they'll have to fight the old guard first. Now, all you warriors of the rising sun, challenge me, fight me, and test your mettle against a generation's finest.
This guy would make one of the greatest grandpas ever. Yoshihiro, a remaining member of the previous generations of samurai, may be old, but that doesn't stop him from swinging around a sword longer than he is tall, and with little effort. He was born for war, and he won't stop fighting until the day it kills him. Feared by many as Shimazu the Beast, Yoshihiro allies with the Western Army, but in other stories offers training and advice to other characters, most namely Keiji and Yukimura, and in Yoshihiro's own Red Route, he joins the Western Army to look after Mitsunari, concerned of how far his revenge will take him. In his other routes, he allies with Muneshige and Kanbei, with the intent of making Kyushu a new nation, independent from the rest of Japan. Despite how much I like Yoshihiro as a character, his fighting style isn't exactly my forte, and that keeps him from being any higher on the list. His great sword may be powerful, but Yoshihiro's attacks are a tad slow, mainly in that he doesn't use it for slashing so much as bludgeoning. The core of his attacks is holding down the square button after any normal attack, in which Yoshihiro will raise his blade into the air, slamming it down at the release of the button, dealing heavy damage to any enemies caught under it. Also worth mentioning that one of his attacks is a battle cry that, at high levels, can send enemies flying or even kill them at point-blank range. Your move, Skyrim!
He's nothing more than a shameful old fool!
It is nice to stop and think of bygone days. Sometimes I feel as if I have been frozen in time. Try if you dare. Let's see what you are capable of. See if you can withstand the bite of my sword.
Though he may look and sound like an old woman, Kenshin is a force to take seriously. Kenshin, feared as the god of war, is one of the strongest warriors in the land, having fought Ieyasu, Yoshiaki, and on many occasions Shingen, and even giving Nobunaga the only defeat before his assassination. Kenshin was made playable in Utage, though like with Shingen, I was kinda disappointed he didn't get a story mode. As a playable character, Kenshin's fighting style is similar to Akachi Mitsuhide from the Samurai Warrior series, in that they're both based on the martial art of Iejutsu, a balance of attacking and counterattacking, though Kenshin's has a noticeable focus on multi-slashing. Only one character has higher attack speed than Kenshin, and that's Mitsunari. In the original game, Kenshin's forces remain neutral throughout, though a small group goes with Keiji in his story, and in some stories, like Yukimuro's Red Route, he allies with either the Eastern or the Western army. And quite frankly, there's not much more to say about Kenshin, except that his Basara attack is probably my favorite in the game. Just watch and see what I mean. And if that wasn't enough, Kenshin is hilariously broken in the Takeda dojo. Or is that just mere coincidence?
He's nothing more than a shameful fool!
Holding my breath, I look back to where I've come from. You couldn't possibly know what I have been through. Attention! Children of the sun, advance! Take my name, and may you spread it high and low across the earth!
You think I hate Sorin? Here's a character I hate even more. Motonari is a strategist who wants nothing more than control over the land. Motonari is a master of manipulation, and along with Yoshitsugu, pulls the strings of the Western Army, all to his self-centered ambitions. To Motonari, everything is disposable. He's the only character in the game that can harm his own men or use them as projectiles in some of his attacks. And despite his alliance with Yoshitsugu, in some cases Motonari breaks his ties with Yoshitsugu, knowing that the latter has a soft spot for Mitsunari, even refusing to kill Ieyasu before Yoshitsugu dies. And while his cause is noble in that he wants only the best for the Mori clan, and knows that the sacrifice of 100 men one day secures the peace for 200 the next, that gets ruined by his sadistic treatment of everyone else. Especially when he turns against the Western Army by killing Yoshitsugu and Mitsunari, and then revealing to Motochika that the so-called Tokugawa invasion of Shikoku was staged to have Motochika join the Western Army and kill his old friend Ieyasu, all for Motonari's selfish desires. Motonari's weapon of choice is a circular blade, similar to a wind and fire wheel, which can also split into two curved blades. However, the main trick to Motonari is that his moveset is centered around placing traps. Simply melee attacking everything won't get you far. You have to predict the battle and know which traps to use. It's literally that mechanic, which actually makes you think like a strategist, that earns him his spot on the list. Because I'll admit, it's the only thing I like about him. On a side note, he has a secret. In Sengoku BASARA 2, he converted to Zavism, something he regrets doing. And playing any of Sorin's stages as Motonari is pure comedy gold.
All hail the power of Pontiff Xavi!
Such a grotesque statue! It cannot stand! I must destroy it!